So hi and welcome to today's video. So today I'm going to be showing you the process of cleaning this van, and you can probably see here by the close-ups that the wheels were the biggest challenge on this vehicle. Very heavily covered in brake dust and quite corroded, unfortunately, so they were a bit of a challenge. The rest of the vehicle itself wasn't too bad. The owner had said he'd given it a once over with a broom, unfortunately, a few weeks before, so the paintwork wasn't super dirty in terms of traffic film. But on closer inspection you could definitely see a lot of algae build up around the badges and a lot of areas where of course the brush he'd used I'd missed. So what I wanted to do when I cleaned this vehicle was try and use some different products by different brands. So what I did is I went through my shelves, and I think apart from the wheel cleaner and the tyre cleaner I used here, I haven't used any of these products in probably around 6 months. And I also have chosen different brands for every product, so you won't see the same brand being used twice in this video. Just thought I'd mix it up a little bit and show you some other products that I have and see how they performed on this van in particular. So of course started by rinsing everything down as much as possible. Because there was just a little bit of loose debris on the car, this all came off reasonably well. The traffic film wasn't too bad. There were just a few areas where there was a lot of algae build up that I could blast away with a pressure washer. It just took a little bit more patience than normal. So jumping in with the first product here, and this is the Solution 61 traffic film remover. So it's a non-corset traffic film remover, and it gets diluted to around 10%, and I used it in my IK sprayer here. It does say TFR and wax on it, which is a little bit of a strange combination. Spoke to Solution 61 and they basically said that the wax isn't sort of really designed to protect the car. That's not the point of it, because that's not something you'd want at this stage of the wash. But instead it's something that's used to help with the rinsing. And the product does rinse away very well, so perhaps that's why, but yeah, that is why it contains it, even though it seems like a little bit of a weird thing to have in a TFR. So I sprayed that all around the vehicle, and I only left it to dwell for around 5 minutes, as at this point in the wash process it was reasonably warm morning, so I didn't want to leave it on there just in case there was any risk of it drying. I used it all over the car, so I did use it on the wheels and the wheel arches. Unfortunately, didn't have any success really with lifting off any more brake dust than had already come off with the rinse process. But it did have some success with the traffic film. There was basically no traffic film left after this stage, and it did a good job at softening some of the algae around the badges. Next, onto the tyres. So for this I used Green Star all-purpose cleaner, and I used that at a concentration of 10%. So I worked that in using my inter-detailing tyre brush, and you can see the foam here turning brown quite quickly. I also worked on the arches using sort of a more household style brush, and they came up in pretty good condition, and I also cleaned of course the mud flaps as well. I had to repeat the process of cleaning the tyres a few times before I was happy with the colour the foam was turning, and by the third pass I was happy that they were going to be clean enough to be dressed. The next product that I used here was a Squid Ink Blue Lagoon wheel cleaner. So this is a dilutable wheel cleaner, and I actually just used it at 10% because I found that it is still effective at this concentration. And I also used a wash mitt that had some shampoo on there that I'll talk about a little bit later on in the process. So the reason I went for this method of using quite gentle chemicals, and the mitt as well mainly, is because unfortunately there was quite a lot of corrosion on these wheels. Although the brake dust was quite heavily sort of baked on there, I didn't want to go in with anything particularly aggressive because I didn't want to kind of promote that corrosion, as there were some parts where the lacquer itself had actually peeled off, so I really didn't want to agitate it any more than necessary. I also didn't do the bowels on this vehicle, as time was a definite concern, so I just wanted to get them looking as good as possible in the time I had. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a lot of the brake dust off that was heavily baked on, but it definitely did look better. So the next product that I used was Auto Bright Magi Foam. Now this is a really thick snow foam, and I used it here at 75ml in a 1 litre foam cannon, and this was more than thick enough and had good enough cleaning ability for what I was looking for here. The van itself wasn't super dirty at this stage by any means. It was probably ready for the contact wash anyway, but I did want to try this product out again because I do quite enjoy using it. But yeah, like I said, the TFR had pretty much dealt with everything, so I probably could have just cracked on with the rest of the process. But instead I applied it and it gave me enough time to sort out all my buckets. Having a really good dwell time is beneficial because I didn't have to rush at this stage when I was sorting everything else out for the contact wash. Even though it was a reasonably warm day, I didn't have to worry about this drying out. So the product was able to soften any of that kind of algae that was still remaining, so I could blast that away and didn't have to worry about it during the contact wash. So in this case, I left the product on there for around 15 minutes before rinsing it off, and it still came off really well and hadn't dried out by this stage. The next products that I used here was Pyramid Car Care's Ultra Shampoo. So this is one that I don't use as often, but it is kind of one of my favourites. I do think it's a very good shampoo. I probably don't like it quite as much as Simple Wax Suds or the Garage Therapy one. I just don't think it's quite as sudsy, but it's probably close in terms of slickness. I'd have to do some real sort of index testing to separate them in that category. But here I used around 15ml in a 15 litre bucket, and that was fine in order to get enough cleaning power and suds out of this. I was very happy with how it performed. I also used my GB detailing brush on some of the badges just to loosen any of the algae that was still remaining. At this point the pre-wash had pretty much dealt with it, but I didn't want any spots in there to still be remaining after this process, so I thought it was a good idea just to give the badges a once over. Plus I always find this stage quite satisfying. I also used a stiffer brush from Because Race Car Box on the rubbers to get rid of any algae that was in there. Just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying the video so far, it would be brilliant if you could drop it a like. It really does help the channel and get the video out there to more people. Now, before anyone does ask, I did do the roof on this car. I didn't film it because there was no way I was putting the tripod on the roof, but you'll have to trust me on that one. It was an absolute pain though, and I had to use a step ladder to get there. Definitely not built for this vehicle. The next products that I used here was Wet Coat by Geom. Now, this is a spray and rinse sealant. I'm sure most people are familiar with it now. What I normally do with this product is spread it using a separate mitt. However, unfortunately, the clouds really did start turning grey, and I did not want to risk using that process and potentially running out of time and it raining before I could finish off the van. So I did just use a sort of traditional spray and rinse method that they say to use. A few sprays per panel, rinse it off, and you get good water behaviour here. I did actually use the Sam's Detailing ceramic foam recently, and I think that was more reactive on application. I would have liked to have used that here, but I wanted to use some different products, but I think that probably could have saved me some time and potentially got a little bit better performance out of it. But I did still feel quite happy that this left a good level of protection, and it also made rinsing the car down and drying it so much easier after using this product. That's why I chose it instead of using a quick detailer spray after drying on this case, as it's quite a big van, so I didn't want to have to go around and dry it for a really long time. Next we've got Detailix Verve, and this is a tyre and trim dressing. Today I just use it on the tyres as that's really sort of my preferred way to use it. It's quite high gloss, so on trim it's a little bit too much for some situations, so I wanted to use something a little bit more muted on those. But for tyres, it does actually make them come out really well. It's a little bit glossy for what I normally use on my car. I prefer a little bit more of a satin finish at the moment. However, for these tyres, I thought it did actually look really nice and helped provide a little bit of contrast, which is useful for trying to make a silver car look a little bit shinier. So as I said, I wanted to go over the trim, and I used what might seem a little bit strange, but this is a tyre glaze formula, and this is by one of the sister brands from Carchem, and I picked this up in one of their mystery boxes, I think back in February maybe. I actually really enjoy using this on trim. It's not quite glossy enough for tyres, and I know I said I like a satin effect, but for me this is quite matte, and it's just, yeah, it's not quite enough for most situations, but I find it pretty perfect for trim because it just has a darkening effect. So I use this on all the kind of plastic trim and the rubbers as well, and I thought that it brought them up in pretty good condition. It's an easy product to use being a spray, and it's not a greasy consistency, so it's quite easy to spread without worrying about smearing and things like that. So here is what the vehicle looked like at the end of the process. I managed to get it sorted before it rained. It literally did start raining as I was taking these shots, but I hope you'll agree there's a good improvement. I was a little bit disappointed that I couldn't get some of the stubborn brake dust off the wheels safely, but the owner was really happy with the finish, so I think that's the main thing. So thanks very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.